Hi guys, I'm going to read another book in the What It Means to Be a Family set. This is In Our Mother's House by Patricia Polacco. I want you to take a look about what you notice about the family on the front cover. Also going to look at the title page and the picture on the title page. On that paper it says Adoption Approved. What does that stamp tell you about the family we're going to read about? As I read, I want you to think about how this family is like yours or different from yours. In Our Mother's House. When my mother told me about how they brought me home to live with them shortly after I was born, their eyes would shine and glisten, and they'd grin from ear to ear. They told me how they had walked across dry, hot deserts, sailed through turbulent seas, flew over tall mountains, and trekked through fierce storms just to bring me home. Then they'd both get tears in their eyes when they'd tell me what it was like to hold me in their arms for the very first time. 3 years after I was born, my brother Will came to us. He was so tiny, just 3 days old. Then there was Millie, who always kidded that our mothers found her under a lily pad in an enchanted pond in a deep hidden forest. She became part of our family when she was 2 months old, 3 years after Will had come. Our mothers were so different from each other that all of us often wondered how they found each other at all. Mima was short and stout. Her family was Italian. She loved to cook, and she loved to sew upstairs on her noisy old machine. Mimi was a pediatrician, and whenever any of us got sick, she always knew exactly what to do to make us feel better. Marmee was tall and thin. She could fix just about anything and organized everything. She made lists, posted chores on the refrigerator, and kept the house so clean and tidy. She used to kid that if she had gotten up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, she'd make our beds before we would climb back into them. Marmee was a paramedic who rode in an ambulance. Wherever there was any kind of emergency, she always remained calm and took charge. Start thinking about those characters and how they are acting in the story. What do you notice about the different characters? Our mothers love to laugh. Mina's whole body shook when she laughed. Marmee laughed almost silently, but she laughed so hard that she practically fall down and go limp. Our mother's house was always alive with music, all kinds. Sometimes our mothers would put on old rock and roll or swing records and get all of us to dance with them. "This is the Holy Goalie," Mima would sing out. Once she flapped her arms like wings and clucked, "The chicken dance!" "And this is the bebop," Marmee said as she grabbed Will and spun him around, then dipped him backwards. We laughed and laughed. We lived in a big old brown shingle house on the Woolsey Street in Berkeley, California. That was set back from the street. When we walked into our mother's house, the first thing we saw was the staircase. All of us slid down the banister. Once, Will was sliding so fast that he couldn't stop at the bottom. He flew off and took the finial with him. In the living room, the old clinker brick fireplace was the heart of our home. Sometimes Marmee and Mimi'd pop popcorn in it, and we'd sit, eat popcorn and apples, and share stories. It was Millie's favorite place to be. I remember when she was about 2, she got up in the middle of the night. We found her the next morning asleep in the hearth, covered with charcoal. She had taken a piece of charcoal and drawn all over the nearby wall. We couldn't take our eyes off her drawing. It was so beautiful. If we hadn't known it before, we knew just how magical Millie was. "Well, my little sparrow," Mima finally whispered, "looks like you're a magnificent artist." they had a different reaction than some of our families might have about drawing all over the wall with charcoal. I wonder what that tells you about this family. The most favored place to be for us kids was the sunroom above the carport. That was where the toys lived. It was where we played dress up and where every Halloween costume we wore began. No store-bought costumes for us. Marmee and Millie designed them and Mimi would sew them for us. One year we went as wild animals. Hardly any of our neighbors recognized us. That is except for Miss Lochner. She knew us all right away. She glared at us when she opened the door. She glared at our mothers too. Her kids came running and were really excited to see us. But Miss Lochner turned her back and shut the door. "What's the matter with her?" Will blurted out. But our mother said nothing and continued down the block. Even so, that was one of the best Halloweens we ever had. We even won the Avenue Costume Contest that year. Look at that whole family all dressed up. They really do have some amazing costumes. Our upstairs bathroom was almost big enough to hold our entire family at one time. It almost did, too. I remember the night all of us kids came down with the flu all at once. Mima and Marmee were darting between each of our rooms. Will, Millie, and I were throwing up. Our mothers changed sheets, washed pajamas, and bathed our foreheads with cool washcloths. I loved how soft their hands were when they touched my face and wiped away my tears. After 2 days of utter misery, our mothers announced that they had a surprise for us. Wonder what it will be. "This will make you feel better," Marmee sang out. We opened our eyes, and there they stood, holding 2 adorable puppies. When those puppies started jumping about and licking our faces, we all squealed with joy. We finally named them Miso and Wasabi. One of the best things about our mother's house was the tree house that was built in the backyard. Practically the entire neighborhood helped us out. It all started with Will, who, like Marmee, was always building things. One Saturday, we found some plans for a tree house and a magazine and went to her. It took several weekends to finish, but the Saturday that we did finish, everyone stood in a circle around the treehouse. Marmee and Mima broke a bottle of soda over the door jamb and named the treehouse Thistle House. That night, all of us kids got to sleep there. Even the Lochner kids were invited, but their parents came and got them. They barely spoke to us, just pulled them down the driveway. They just plain didn't like us, I guessed. I couldn't quite understand why. We always tried to be respectful and friendly, the way our mothers taught us to be. The kitchen in our mother's house was the center of everything that was happening in our household. The kitchen doorway was where us kids got measured each year. Marmee and Mima's handwriting was still there even now. And all of our family holidays began in that kitchen. Our grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins usually came for the weekend. Our Italian grandpa, or Nonno, was in charge of cooking. We all loved gnocchi. We'd all help him unload the perfect Roma tomatoes, the oxtails, the pork shanks, the beef brisket. We'd peel onions, shaved and diced carrots, and chopped fresh herbs from the garden. After the sauce had been cooking for most of the day, all of us stood at the kitchen island. Nonno made a well in the middle of a hill of flour and broke several eggs into it. Then he riced very hot boiled potatoes right into the flour well. He'd shake his hands from the heat as if he kneaded the volcano of flour, eggs, and potatoes into a dough. Then Marmee and Mima would roll the dough into long tubes. Millie and Will would get to cut them into small pillows. Then I would ran each pillow over the back of a floured fork. Nonno dropped the gnocchi into boiling water. When they floated to the top, they were done. Sauce and potato dumplings were finished up with salads were made and baguettes of fresh bread from the bakery were carried to the table. They were all ready to eat. At our table, we didn't only eat, though. Marmee and Mima made sure of that. Everyone talked about everything: politics, sports, music, arts. Their voices got louder and louder. Opera was always playing in the background. Then they'd all burst into laughter that shook the table. Nono would pound his fists and laugh the loudest. What I loved the most about our family was that we could all speak our hearts when we never measured words. After dinner, all of us kids would sit on the stairs with our grandparents. This is when they would tell us about when they were young in the old country. It was the best part of the day. Marmee and Mima would listen in and smile. One of the niftiest things that happened in our neighborhood was the Woodsley Street Block Party. Marmee organized it. It became a tradition. For the first one, Millie and I made all of the invitations by hand, and Mima took them with us to deliver from door to door. Everyone was invited. We stopped by the Lochner's house. Their mother glared at us the way they always did. "Why doesn't that lady like us?" I asked my mother. She just smiled at me and hugged me. "I like you, baby," she said, and we went on our way. The day of our big block party arrived. Each of the houses on the street had to invent some sort of game in their front yard. The McGilverys across the street had a landmine contest. A blindfolded player had to pick his best way past the marshmallow mines, while a caller warned him about where to go. The Goldsteins had a penny toss on saucers. The Brooks family had a dunk tank. A lot of fathers got dunked that day. The Abuelas had a fishing booth. I think my family had the best game of all, though, a miniature golf course. Will, Marmee, and I put it together. We lashed together old rain gutters with traps and obstacles that had to be putted around in order to get to the end, a flower pot buried to the top. It was Marmee's great idea. "Aren't we all something?" Mimi said as we saw our food court. On our street, everyone was so different. That's what Mimi meant. So the Mercedians brought stuffed grape leaves and ground lamb. The Polos brought spanakopita and Greek salads. The Oblelas brought hummus and tabbouleh. Nono had made a huge pot of spaghetti and fried schnitzel. The Yamagashis brought sushi, which I liked a lot. But Mimi passed it up for fried clams and crawdads and corn on the cobs, which the Barbers had made. At the end of the day, when everyone was cleaning up and getting ready to sit in our backyard and just talk, Mima looked up and saw Miss Lochner coming down the street. The Lochners had been invited, but hadn't come. She planted her feet squarely in front of my mother's. "I don't appreciate what you two are," she snarled at Mimi and Marmee. Will and Millie came running up. I froze where I was. Miss Lochner wheeled and stalked off. "What's the matter with her, Mama? What's the matter with her?" Millie kept saying. All the neighbors closed in on us. "She is full of fear, sweetie. She's afraid of what she can't understand." "She doesn't understand us," Mima quietly said. "There seems to be no love in her heart either," whispered Marmee. The neighbors agreed. And one by one, they all hugged our mothers. Then they all stayed and talked until late that night, thanking Mima one more time for thinking up the block party idea. Excuse me. There wasn't a day in my life that I didn't feel deeply loved and wanted. Our mothers were willing to do anything for us, and we knew it. Here's what I mean. One day, Millie and I ran all the way home from school and came tumbling into the kitchen with news. "We've been picked to host the mother-daughter tea this year," she squealed, jumping up in joy. "Wow, what an honor!" Mimi said, and looked at Marmee. That means we're going to have tea here, I trumpeted, and I looked at them. You will both have to wear long dresses with big picture hats. All of the mothers will be dressed like that, Millie added quickly. Mimi and Marmee looked at each other and shrugged. We have never seen either of them in a dress, ever. Okay, they finally said. Well, okay. This was going to be a first. Mima sewed 3 whole nights to finish not only their dresses, but Millie's and mine as well. The garden was decorated, tables rented and set, the string quartet was hired, and our mothers had the affair catered by Nono. After Millie and I got dressed, we waited at the bottom of the stairs for our mothers. We could hardly wait to see them. Look at her sewing away. Then they appeared at the top of the stairway. We both caught our breath. They floated down like shimmering swans. As uncomfortable as they must have been, they looked beautiful. The tea was glorious. Everyone commented on how elegant everything was. My heart still skips a beat when I think of the two of them trying so hard to please us in those awkward, sweeping, ridiculous dresses. How we love them for doing it just for us. From the day we entered our mother's house, they prepared us for the day that we would leave it. I was the first when I left to go away to medical school. Then Will left to study engineering. Our Millie went all the way to New York to become a fashion designer. Of course, our hearts never left our mother's house. And over the years, Will, Millie, and I returned to be married in the garden back under the thistle house. We celebrated holidays together there, sang at birthday parties there, cried together when we lost our grandparents. When the 3 of us had our babies, all of them took their first steps in front of that brick fireplace in the living room. They fell into waiting arms of their grandmothers, just as we had done. We watched our mothers grow old together in that house. They passed away within a year of each other. Will, Millie, and I placed them together in the green hillside overlooking the bay, very near the place where they pledged their love to each other so many years ago. Will and his family live in our mother's house now. We are so pleased that I didn't go to a stranger, and it's still a gathering place for all of us and our families. The walls still whisper our mother's names. All of our hearts find peace whenever we are there, not only remembering them, but being there together in our mother's house. It's kind of a dark picture, so it's hard to see. So I want you to think about the ending of that story and what it means to you. Think about how you might describe the characters in the book. How would you describe Mimi and Marmee and Will and Millie? And what is the greater message of the story? What does the author, Patricia Polacco, want you to take away from that story and remember in 10 years? I hope you liked Our Mother's House. If you liked it, you can read more by Patricia Polacco. She has many great books, including Junkyard Wonders, which we read earlier this school year. Have a great day.